3 hours after lowering my husband into the ground, his family cornered me in his study to celebrate my eviction. My name is Madison Turner. I'm 32 years old, and until this morning, I was the wife of Robert Turner, CEO of Turner Logistics. We had 3 beautiful years together before cancer took him. Now, as I stand in his mahogany-paneled study, surrounded by his mother Eleanor and his adult children, I realize they've been planning this moment since the day we married. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. What they didn't know was that Robert had prepared for this moment 3 years ago. I met Robert when I was working as a night shift nurse at Cedars-Sinai. He'd just come through a complicated surgery, and I was assigned to his post-op care. For 2 weeks, we talked about everything: his love for sailing, my dream of opening a clinic for underserved communities, his regrets about being an absent father during his children's childhood. The 26-year age gap meant nothing to us. But to his family, I was branded a gold digger from day one. She saw the Rolex and the private room, Eleanor had whispered at our engagement party, loud enough for me to hear. These nurses know exactly what they're doing. Robert's first marriage to Patricia had lasted 30 years. She'd passed 5 years before we met, and by all accounts, she'd been the perfect society wife. Wellesley educated, from old money, never worked a day in her life. I was everything she wasn't: daughter of a mechanic and a waitress, both gone now, community college educated, and worst of all, in their eyes, I'd actually touched bedpans for a living. The Cartier wedding ring Robert placed on my finger might as well have been a target. Every family gathering, Eleanor would eye it with disgust. Patricia's ring was a family heirloom, she'd remind everyone. 4 generations of Turner women wore it. The Hermes bags Robert gifted me for birthdays and anniversaries? Trying too hard, Eleanor would murmur to her friends. New money always does. But Robert saw it all. 2 months before his diagnosis returned, he pulled me close and said something I'll never forget. "They'll show their true colors when I'm gone, Madison. But don't worry, I'm not leaving you defenseless." I thought he meant life insurance. I had no idea he meant something far more powerful. Turner Logistics wasn't just a company. It was an empire worth $45 million, with 500 employees across 3 states. The Bel Air mansion we lived in was valued at $12 million, with its infinity pool overlooking the city, and a 6-car garage housing Robert's collection of vintage Porsches. The investment portfolio added another $8 million to the estate. David, Robert's eldest son, worked as CFO of the company. At 35, he drove a Tesla Model S and wore the same Patek Philippe watch his father had gifted him for his 30th birthday. What Robert never told David was that he knew about the $2 million that had mysteriously disappeared from the accounts over the past 3 years. Small amounts, Robert had told me during one of his chemo sessions. He thinks he's being clever, moving it through subsidiaries. I have every transaction documented. "Why don't you confront him?" I'd asked. Robert had smiled sadly. "Timing, my dear. Everything is about timing." Sarah, his daughter, was 33 and a Harvard-trained lawyer who specialized in estate planning. She had an office full of degrees and a reputation for aggressive litigation. What she didn't know was that Robert had copies of 3 documents she'd forged with Eleanor's knowledge: property transfers that would have moved assets out of Robert's name without his consent. The family assumed Robert was too sick, too medicated to notice their maneuvering. They treated his cancer like a countdown clock to their inheritance. But Robert Turner hadn't built his empire by being naive. Even from his hospital bed, weak from treatment, he was orchestrating something none of them saw coming. The question that haunted me now, standing in his study, was simple. Why had he let them believe they were winning? I gave up my nursing career the day Robert's cancer returned. It wasn't about the money. I loved my work, my patients, my purpose. But Robert needed round-the-clock care, and he trusted no one else with his medications, his fear, his dignity in those darkest moments. Those long nights in the hospital, while I adjusted his IV drip and held his hand through the pain, Robert would work on what he called his contingency plans. Legal documents spread across his hospital tray, his laptop always within reach despite my protests that he needed rest. "I'm protecting you," he'd say when I tried to close his computer. "Let me do this one thing right." Eleanor visited exactly 3 times during his final month. Each visit lasted less than 15 minutes, and she spent most of it asking about the estate planning. She never once asked how he was feeling. At the family Christmas dinner, Robert's last, she arranged the official family photo while I was in the kitchen. "We need one with just the real family," she'd announced, loud enough for me to hear. But there was something else happening during those final weeks. Robert's personal attorney, James Crawford, visited the house 4 times. Each time, he left with sealed envelopes and a grim expression. The last time, just 5 days before Robert passed, Crawford had placed a thick envelope in Robert's home safe and said, "Everything is in place, Robert. The trust is ironclad." "Good," Robert had whispered, his voice barely audible. "They've shown me who they are. Now I'll show them who I am." Love isn't measured in years but in sacrifice. And for 3 years, I'd loved Robert Turner with everything I had. What I didn't know was that he'd spent those same 3 years building me a fortress. 2 hours after the funeral, 15 members of the Turner family had assembled in our home like vultures circling a carcass. Eleanor had already opened a bottle of Cristal champagne, the 2008 vintage Robert had been saving for our 5th anniversary. "To new beginnings," she toasted, not even pretending to mourn. David had been busy too. I overheard him on the phone with a moving company. "Yes, 8 a.m. tomorrow, everything in the master bedroom and the second-floor office. No, the lady won't be here." Sarah had her laptop open at Robert's desk, typing what looked like legal documents. When I walked closer, she quickly minimized the window, but not before I saw the header. Voluntary departure agreement. The cousins and aunts had begun their inventory. Aunt Margaret was already eyeing the Waterford crystal collection. "Patricia picked these out," she announced to no one in particular. "They should go back to the family. Even the help knows when their shift is over." That's what Eleanor said when she saw me enter the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. The laughter that followed felt like needles in my skin. But the cruelest revelation came when I tried to enter our bedroom, my bedroom, to get my phone charger. The lock had been changed. The locksmith's invoice was still on the hall table, dated yesterday. While I'd been selecting flowers for my husband's casket, they'd been changing the locks on our home. I stood there, locked out of my own bedroom, surrounded by people celebrating my husband's death, and felt something shift inside me. Grief transformed into something else, something colder, more focused. I pulled out my phone and hit record. If they wanted to show their true colors, I'd make sure to capture every shade. Eleanor called everyone into the main living room, standing beneath the oil portrait of Robert's grandfather, the company founder. She wanted an audience for this. "Now that Robert has passed," she began, her voice carrying the authority of a matriarch reclaiming her throne, "it's time to address the elephant in the room. The real Mrs. Turner has always been me. I built this family's social standing while Robert built the business." She turned to me with a smile that could freeze blood. "Madison, dear, you were a comfort to Robert in his final years. We appreciate that. But your services are no longer required." The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. David stepped forward, emboldened by champagne and greed. "Let's be honest about what this was. Dad was lonely and confused after Mom died. You saw an opportunity and took it. 3 years of pretending must have been exhausting." "She didn't even give him children," Aunt Margaret added. "At least Patricia gave us David and Sarah." Sarah stood up, waving a document. "I've reviewed the prenuptial agreement Madison signed. She's entitled to $50,000 in personal effects, quite generous for 3 years of companionship. The prenup she held was fake. I knew because Robert and I never signed one. He'd refused despite his lawyer's advice. 'I trust you,' he'd said. 'And I want them to know I trusted you.'" I remained silent, my phone recording everything from my pocket. Let them hang themselves with their own words. David couldn't resist twisting the knife deeper. The house, the cars, the jewelry, it all reverts to the family. Dad might have been confused, but Turner assets stay with Turner blood. That's when I finally spoke. You have 1 hour to reconsider this mistake. The laughter stopped. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat, dear? No, I said quietly. It's a deadline. If you've ever been judged for who you love or where you come from, you'll understand what happens next. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger, it's preparation. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button if you believe in justice, and comment below, what would you do in Madison's position? Now, let me show you why Robert Turner was 3 steps ahead of everyone. Sarah pulled out another document, this one looking more official. Since you want to do this the hard way, here's your formal eviction notice, 24 hours to vacate the premises. Take your nurse scrubs and Target furniture, Eleanor added, her voice dripping with disdain. Leave anything Robert purchased. After all, those were bought with Turner money. David held up his phone. I've already frozen the credit cards this morning. The bank accounts are frozen too, pending investigation into undue influence. Standard procedure when a vulnerable elderly person marries someone so much younger. Security will arrive tomorrow at 8, Sarah continued, clearly enjoying her role as the family's legal executioner. If you're not gone, they'll escort you out. We've booked you a room at the Motel 6 on Sepulveda. 1 night prepaid. After that, you're on your own. The cousins were already discussing who would get what. I'll take the master bedroom, David announced. Sarah, you can have the pool house converted into an office. That's when I said something that made them all freeze. Robert warned me about this exact scenario. He said you'd try to steal everything the moment he died. He also mentioned something about the other will. The champagne glass slipped from Eleanor's hand, shattering on the marble floor. Sarah's face went pale. What other will? The one James Crawford has, I said, heading toward the door. The real one. The one Robert recorded on video with 3 witnesses. The one that includes some very interesting information about David's embezzlement and Sarah's forgery. David stepped in front of me. You're bluffing. I looked him straight in the eye. Your father documented every transaction you made through the subsidiary accounts. $2 million, David. That's grand larceny. The room had gone completely silent. Eleanor's voice cracked when she spoke. You're lying. 1 hour, I repeated, then walked out. Eleanor's panic lasted exactly 5 minutes before her arrogance returned. She called an emergency family council, summoning every Turner relative within driving distance. By 6 p.m., 25 people had gathered in the formal dining room, including 3 family lawyers she'd contacted. We're here to formally read Robert's will, Eleanor announced, holding up a document I'd never seen before. Sarah prepared this under Robert's instruction last year. Sarah stood, every inch the Harvard lawyer. Robert's wishes were clear. The family assets remain with the family. David inherits the company, I receive the real estate holdings, and Mother manages the investment portfolio as she always has. They passed the document around the table. Each signature page was witnessed and notarized. It looked perfectly legitimate, except for one small problem. Robert's signature was forged. I knew his handwriting better than anyone. The way he curved his R's, the pressure he used on downstrokes. This wasn't even close. We'll now vote to remove Madison as emergency contact and next of kin, Eleanor continued. All in favor? 24 hands rose. Only I kept mine down. Democracy has spoken, dear, Eleanor smiled. You have no standing here. I pulled out my phone and sent a simple text. It's time. David noticed. Who are you texting? Your lawyer? You can't afford one now that we've frozen the accounts. No, I said calmly. I'm texting Robert's lawyer, the one he's been using for 30 years, the one who knows about the trust. Sarah laughed. There is no trust. I would have known about it. The doorbell rang. Through the dining room's glass doors, we could all see James Crawford standing at the entrance, briefcase in hand. Funny thing about trusts, I said, standing to let him in. They don't have to be filed with the family lawyers. Before Crawford could enter, Eleanor raised her champagne glass one more time. A toast, she announced, to the real Turners, the ones who built this empire and will continue to run it. The room erupted in premature celebration. David was already on his phone with the company's board members, informing them of his new position as CEO. Sarah pulled out her laptop to begin transferring property deeds. Eleanor called her financial advisor to discuss the investment portfolio. Madison, Eleanor said, turning to me with false sympathy, we're not heartless. Here's $1,000 cash for your troubles. She pulled the bills from her purse, fanning them out on the table like a blackjack dealer. Consider it severance pay for your services. The cousins had started claiming items. I'll take the Steinway piano, one announced. Margaret, you wanted the China collection, right? David couldn't resist one final jab. We've called the Salvation Army to pick up your personal belongings tomorrow. Tax write-off, you understand. And that Motel 6 reservation? It's under your maiden name. We thought that would be more appropriate. Sarah added, I've drafted a non-disclosure agreement. Sign it, and we'll give you an additional $5,000. Don't sign it, and we'll pursue legal action for attempted fraud. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. I should get that, I said, standing. Sit down, David commanded. Sarah, go see who it is. Sarah walked to the door, confidence radiating from every step. She opened it, and James Crawford's voice carried clearly into the dining room. I believe you're having a family meeting without the majority shareholder present. The champagne fountain someone had set up chose that moment to malfunction, spraying Eleanor with pink champagne. It felt like even the house knew what was coming. I stood slowly, looking around the room at the faces that had tormented me for 3 years. They expected me to beg, to cry, to rage against the injustice. Instead, I spoke with the same calm voice I'd used when telling patients difficult news. I loved Robert despite your hatred. I cared for him through your absence. When the chemo made him vomit blood at 3 a.m., where were you? When he cried from the pain, begged for it to end, who held him? Eleanor shifted uncomfortably. David looked away. His last month, I continued, he asked for his children every day. David, you visited once, for 10 minutes, and spent it asking about quarterly projections. Sarah, you came twice, both times with documents to sign. Eleanor, you came 3 times, never staying long enough for your champagne to warm. We had responsibilities, David started. You had greed, I interrupted. Robert's last words to me were, check the foundation safe. I thought he was delirious, but he wasn't, was he, Mr. Crawford? Crawford entered the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. No, Mrs. Turner. Robert was quite lucid when he gave those instructions. You can take things, I said, picking up my wedding album from the side table. But you can't take memories. You can steal houses and money, but you can't steal the fact that in his final moments, Robert chose me. Not because I was young or beautiful or convenient, but because I was there. I walked toward the door, past the cousins clutching their claimed treasures, past Sarah's laptop full of forged documents, past Eleanor's shattered champagne glass. Mrs. Turner, Crawford said loudly, opening his briefcase. As executor of Robert Turner's actual last will and testament, I need you to stay. The room fell silent. Eleanor's face had gone white. What do you mean, actual will? I pulled my pre-packed suitcase from behind the sofa. I'd hidden it there this morning, knowing this moment would come. Eleanor immediately rushed over to inspect it, pawing through my belongings like a customs officer. Robert's watch, she said triumphantly, pulling out the Rolex Submariner. This stays here. That's my father's watch, I said quietly. He was a mechanic, remember? Saved for 5 years to buy it. Check the engraving. Eleanor turned it over, reading the inscription. To Tommy, love Dad, 1987. She dropped it like it burned her. Sarah grabbed my jewelry box. Let me check these pieces. My mother's costume jewelry, I said. except for my wedding ring, which I'm keeping. The ring stays, David insisted. It was purchased with Turner money. I slipped it off my finger and placed it on the table. Keep it. It's just metal and stone. What Robert gave me was worth more than diamonds. Eleanor found what she was looking for, a thick manila envelope at the bottom of the suitcase. What's this? Robert's last letter to me, I said, and some documents he wanted me to read after the funeral. Those belong to the estate, Sarah said, reaching for them. Crawford's voice cut through the room like a blade. Actually, Ms. Mitchell, those documents supersede anything you've prepared. Mrs. Turner, as executor of the real will, I need you to open that envelope now. This is ridiculous, David said. Sarah prepared Dad's will. It's been notarized and filed. Crawford smiled, the kind of smile that preceded very bad news for someone. Mr. Turner, your father filed multiple wills, but only one was created with proper witnesses, video recorded, and registered with the state 3 years ago. The one your sister prepared? It's worthless. Crawford opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder marked Turner Family Trust, Confidential. 3 years ago, he began, his courtroom voice filling the space. Robert Turner discovered several disturbing facts. David, you had embezzled $2 million through false invoices and subsidiary transfers. Sarah, you and your mother forged Robert's signature on 3 property transfer documents. That's slander, Sarah shouted. It's documented, Crawford replied, pulling out bank statements, emails, and notarized affidavits. Robert hired a forensic accountant. Every transaction is tracked. Every forged document is authenticated by handwriting experts. Eleanor sank into a chair. Robert knew? He knew everything, Crawford continued. Instead of prosecuting, he decided to test you. He created an irrevocable trust, moving 51% of Turner Logistics shares into it. Madison is the sole beneficiary and trustee. When? David's voice cracked. When did he do this? 3 years ago, 2 weeks after he discovered your theft. The same week Sarah filed those forged transfers. He said, and I quote from our recorded meeting, "If they'll steal from me while I'm alive, what will they do when I'm dead?" I opened Robert's letter with shaking hands. His handwriting, authentic this time, filled the page. My dearest Madison, if you're reading this at a family meeting, they've shown themselves exactly as I predicted. The trust documents Crawford has are ironclad. You now control Turner Logistics. The house has been in your name for 2 years. Check the county records. My family will contest this, but they can't win. I've documented their crimes too thoroughly. Use this power wisely. You were the only one who loved me without conditions. Now let me protect you unconditionally. This can't be legal, Sarah stammered. Crawford smiled. Your Harvard Law degree should tell you it's perfectly legal, Ms. Mitchell. Robert Turner spent 3 years documenting his family's betrayal while battling cancer. What would you do if you discovered your own blood plotting against you? If this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that justice exists. Drop a comment about a time you stood up to bullies. Now watch how Madison Turner became the most powerful person in the room. I continued reading Robert's letter aloud, my voice steady, despite the tears threatening to fall. To my family, if you're hearing this, you've already tried to destroy the woman I love. David, the $2 million you stole is documented in Exhibit A. Sarah, your forged documents are in Exhibit B. Eleanor, your manipulation of my accounts while I was in chemotherapy is in Exhibit C. David lunged for the papers, but Crawford blocked him. Mr. Turner, I'd advise against that. Assault would only add to your legal troubles. The letter continued. I'm not seeking revenge from the grave. I'm seeking justice. Madison gave up her career to care for me. She held my hand through 12 rounds of chemotherapy. She never once asked about inheritance or money. The prenup Sarah is waving around is a forgery. We never signed one because I wanted you all to know I trusted Madison completely. Eleanor found her voice. This is undue influence. He was sick, medicated. Crawford pulled out a tablet and pressed play. A video filled the screen. Robert in his study, 3 months before his death, clear-eyed and articulate, with 3 witnesses present. Crawford, another attorney, and a court reporter. I, Robert James Turner, being of sound mind and body, do hereby confirm the establishment of the Turner Family Trust with Madison Turner as sole beneficiary. I make this decision freely, without coercion, fully aware of its implications. The video Robert looked directly at the camera. To my children and mother, who will undoubtedly claim I was manipulated. I have stage 4 cancer, not dementia. My body is failing, but my mind is sharp. Sharp enough to see who you really are, and sharp enough to protect the one person who sees who I am. Sarah slumped in her chair. 3 years. He planned this for 3 years. Crawford pulled out document after document, each one another nail in the coffin of their scheme. I've been Robert's attorney for 30 years, he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. I've never seen him more lucid than when he created these documents. The trust is filed with the state, the IRS has been notified, and copies are held in 3 separate locations. He turned to Sarah. Ms. Mitchell, the will you prepared isn't worth the paper it's printed on. Forging a dead man's signature is a felony. The FBI has been notified. FBI? David went pale. For what? Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, Crawford listed. The forensic accountant Robert hired, he's a former FBI investigator. Case number 2024-7739 has been opened. You have approximately 48 hours before arrests are made. Eleanor stood, shaking. This is our family's company. Robert's father built it. And Robert built it into what it is today, Crawford replied. The company was his to distribute as he wished. He wished it to go to someone with integrity. But the properties, Sarah started. The property transfers you forged? They're void. In fact, they're evidence. The Bel Air house? Robert transferred it to Madison 2 years ago, completely legally. Check the county records. It's all public information you somehow missed while plotting. Crawford pulled out one final document. There's also the matter of the video will. Robert recorded his final testament 2 weeks before his death. Would you like to see it now, or would you prefer to see it in court? The room had become a tomb. 25 members of the Turner family sat in stunned silence, their champagne glasses forgotten, their claimed treasures meaningless. Play it, Eleanor whispered. Play the damn video. Crawford connected his tablet to the 85-inch TV that dominated the room's east wall. Robert's face filled the screen, gaunt from cancer but eyes blazing with determination. He was in his hospital bed, but fully alert, wearing his Navy dress uniform, the one he'd asked to be buried in. To my family watching this, Robert began, his voice stronger than it had been in months. I know everything. Every theft, every lie, every forged document. The camera panned to show 3 witnesses, Crawford, Judge Patricia Hoffman, and Dr. Michael Chen, Robert's oncologist. David, you've stolen $2 million over 3 years. Small amounts, clever routing, but I have every transaction. You started the week after I promoted you to CFO. I kept you in position to see how far you'd go. You never stopped. David's Tesla keys fell from his hand, clattering on the marble floor. Sarah, you helped Mother forge transfer documents for 3 properties, including the Tahoe cabin and the Santa Barbara rental. You used your legal knowledge to commit fraud. I have the originals and your forgeries. Your handwriting is on the witness lines. Sarah's Harvard Law degree might as well have been toilet paper. Eleanor, my mother, you've controlled this family through manipulation and greed for 50 years. You drove Patricia to prescription pills with your constant criticism. You tried to destroy Madison the same way, but Madison is stronger than you knew. The video Robert lifted a document. This is my real will. Madison inherits controlling interest in Turner Logistics. She is now your boss if she chooses to keep any of you. Then came the killing blow. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. Madison is my family. You are merely my relatives. The video ended with Robert's final words. Madison, honey, they never deserved you. Now make them deserve mercy. Crawford closed his briefcase with a decisive snap. As of this moment, Madison Turner is the chairman and CEO of Turner Logistics. She controls 51% of shares through the Irrevocable Trust. David Turner, he continued, you're terminated from your position as CFO, effective immediately. You have 30 days to repay the $2 million or face federal prosecution. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I have children. A mortgage. Should have thought of that before stealing, I said quietly. Crawford turned to Sarah. Ms. Mitchell, the California Bar Association will be notified of your forgery on Monday. Your license to practice law will be suspended pending investigation. Criminal charges may follow. My career, Sarah whispered. Everything I worked for. Is gone, Crawford confirmed, just like the money you tried to steal. Eleanor stood, gripping the table for support. The investment portfolio, surely that remains mine. The portfolio Robert built? No. Your name was removed as beneficiary 3 years ago when you tried to transfer funds without his knowledge. You have your personal savings and your late husband's pension, nothing more. I stood, walking to the head of the table where Robert used to sit. The CEO seal Crawford handed me felt heavier than gold. The keys to every Turner property jangled in my hand. The board meeting is Monday at 9, I announced. If any of you still have positions with the company, and that's a big if, don't be late. Cousins started fleeing toward the door, but Crawford's voice stopped them. Before anyone leaves, please return any items you've claimed. Security cameras have recorded everything. Taking them now would be theft. The Waterford crystal was hastily replaced. The china returned to its cabinet. The champagne stopped flowing. Eleanor Turner, the woman who'd ruled this family with an iron fist for 5 decades, fell to her knees. Please, Madison, I'm 79 years old. Where will I go? The same place you suggested for me, I replied. There's a Motel 6 on Sepulveda. David grabbed my arm, desperation replacing arrogance. Madison, please, I have kids. Private school tuition. If you fire me, if you press charges, we'll lose everything. The way you tried to make me lose everything 3 hours after my husband's funeral? Sarah was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. We're family. You can't destroy us like this. Family? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You changed the locks while I was at Robert's funeral. You called me a gold digger at his wake. You tried to throw me out of my own home. That's not family. The cousins who'd been so eager to claim treasures were now pressed against the walls, trying to become invisible. Aunt Margaret, who'd called me the help, was clutching her pearls like a lifeline. Crawford's phone buzzed. Security is here, Mrs. Turner. Shall I have them escort everyone out? Not yet, I said. I haven't decided what to do with any of you yet. The power shift was seismic. The same people who'd laughed at me 3 hours ago were now looking at me with terror. Eleanor, still on her knees, grabbed the hem of my dress, the simple black dress she'd mocked at the funeral for being off the rack. Robert wouldn't want this, she pleaded. I pulled out my phone and played a voice recording. Robert from 2 weeks ago. Madison, when they beg, remember how they treated you. Mercy is earned, not demanded. I let them suffer in silence for a full minute before speaking. Robert believed in second chances. Despite everything, he never wanted you destroyed, just held accountable. Hope flickered in their eyes like candles in a storm. So here's my proposition. David, you can keep a job at Turner Logistics, in the warehouse, entry level, minimum wage. Every penny goes toward the $2 million you stole. Pay it back in 5 years, and I won't press charges. The warehouse? David's face flushed. I have an MBA from Wharton. And sticky fingers, take it or leave it. I turned to Sarah. You can avoid prison if you testify against Eleanor about the forged documents. You'll still lose your law license, but you'll stay free. Sarah nodded frantically, throwing her mother under the bus without hesitation. Eleanor, I continued, you can receive a monthly allowance, $2,000, if you publicly apologize at the next company meeting. 500 employees will hear you admit what you tried to do. Public humiliation? Eleanor's voice cracked. Public accountability? The cousins and extended family? Return everything you've taken over the years? I have an inventory, and you can attend family events. Otherwise, you're permanently banned from any Turner property. You said you hadn't decided, David protested. I hadn't, but Robert left me guidance. I pulled out another letter. He suggested these exact terms. He knew you'd beg. He also knew I'd be too kind without his advice. Crawford added, you have 48 hours to accept these terms. After that, full prosecution proceeds. One more thing, I announced. $10 million of company profits will establish the Robert Turner Nursing Scholarship, helping people like I used to be. People you call gold diggers, but who actually care for your loved ones when you won't. Monday morning came faster than they expected. The Turner Logistics main conference room was packed with 500 employees, all wondering why an emergency meeting had been called. Eleanor stood at the podium, her usual designer suit replaced with a simple black dress. Her hands shook as she gripped the microphone. I need to apologize, she began, her voice barely audible. To Madison Turner, our new CEO, and to all of you. I tried to illegally remove her from the company and the family after my son's death. I called her a gold digger. I was wrong. Gasps rippled through the crowd. David sat in the front row, wearing a warehouse uniform with his name tag reading, David, probationary employee. Eleanor continued, each word seemingly pulled from her throat. Madison cared for my son when I couldn't be bothered. She gave up her career while I schemed to steal his assets. She is more family to Robert than I ever was. Local news cameras rolled. The story would make evening broadcasts. Widow wins against greedy in-laws. Turner Logistics under new leadership. Sarah stood next, reading from a prepared statement to avoid perjury. I, Sarah Mitchell, formerly Turner, confess to attempting to forge legal documents to disinherit Madison Turner. I was wrong, legally and morally. The Bar Association representative in attendance took notes. Sarah's career in law was officially over. I took the podium last. Turner Logistics will move forward with new leadership and new values. Integrity isn't inherited, it's earned. Everyone in this company, regardless of their last name, will be held to the same standards. The employees erupted in applause. They'd suffered under David's embezzlement and Eleanor's interference for years. Also, I added, effective immediately, all employees receive a 5% raise, funded by the money recovered from executive theft. The applause became a standing ovation. 6 weeks later, the new order had settled into reality. David punched in at 6 a.m. for his warehouse shift, his soft hands now calloused from handling packages. His supervisor, Marcus, whom David had once tried to fire for requesting family leave, now controlled his schedule. Turner, Marcus called out. You're on loading dock 3 today. The Patek Philippe watch had been sold to cover his children's school tuition. The Tesla replaced with a 10-year-old Honda Civic. Sarah worked as a paralegal at a legal aid clinic in Bakersfield, making $30,000 a year. Her Harvard diplomas sat in storage, worthless paper testimonies to a destroyed career. The FBI had accepted her cooperation deal, but the bar's decision was final: permanent disbarment. Eleanor lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Van Nuys, her monthly allowance barely covering rent and groceries. The woman who once spent $2,000 on a single lunch now clipped coupons. Meanwhile, Turner Logistics thrived. Stock value increased 30% in the first quarter under my leadership. The employees, motivated by fair treatment and better wages, exceeded every projection. But the biggest surprise came during my quarterly checkup. Dr. Chen ran the test twice to be sure. Congratulations, Mrs. Turner, you're pregnant. The IVF treatments Robert and I had done before his diagnosis, The embryos we'd frozen, just in case, had worked on the first try. I sat in Robert's former office, now mine, looking at the ultrasound photo, his portrait watched from the wall, that knowing smile still present. "This child will know their father was a man of honor," I said to the portrait. "They'll know he saw 3 years into the future and protected us both." Crawford knocked and entered with more papers. "The foundation paperwork is complete. First scholarships will be awarded next month." Everything Robert planned had come to pass. The Turner Logistics annual gala was held at the Beverly Hilton, the same venue where Eleanor had once publicly snubbed me at a charity function. Now I stood at the podium, 7 months pregnant, addressing a room of employees, investors, and partners. Revenue was up 40%. We'd landed 3 major contracts that David had fumbled for years. The employee satisfaction scores were the highest in company history. "Success," I told the audience, "is the best response to disrespect." In the back corner, David stood in his server's uniform. He'd taken a second job catering to make his restitution payments faster. He carried a tray of champagne to guests who used to be his peers. One of them, not recognizing him in uniform, handed him a $1 tip. Sarah wasn't there. She'd moved to Arizona, starting over where no one knew the Turner name or her disgrace. Her last email had been brief. "I'm sorry for everything." Eleanor sat in the assisted living facility my foundation had partnered with, not the luxury retirement community she'd planned, but clean, safe, and dignified. She'd stopped asking for more money after month 3. The baby shower last week had been small but genuine. My former nursing colleagues, new friends from the business world, and surprisingly, Aunt Margaret, who'd approached me with genuine humility. "I was wrong," she'd said simply. "Robert loved you. That should have been enough for us." I'd accepted her apology. Robert would have wanted that. Crawford presented me with another envelope at the gala, this one happy news. "Robert left instructions for this to be opened at your first company gala as CEO." Inside, a photo of us on our wedding day, and a simple note: "You did it, my love. Now build something beautiful." Standing in Robert's study, my study now, I reflected on the lessons these months had taught me. The room where they'd cornered me after the funeral had become my sanctuary. But I'd changed nothing. Robert's books, his ship models, his father's photograph, all remained exactly as he'd left them. Money doesn't create character, it reveals it. The Turner family had millions before I arrived and millions after Robert died. What changed was who controlled those millions and why. David's theft hadn't been about need. He'd earned $300,000 a year as CFO. It was about entitlement, the belief that the company owed him more simply for being born a Turner. Sarah's forgeries weren't desperate acts, but calculated moves, assuming her legal knowledge placed her above the law. Eleanor's cruelty stemmed from fear that someone from outside her social circle could earn what she'd only inherited. But Robert had seen it all. 3 years of silent observation, documenting their true nature while they smiled at Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings. He'd given them every opportunity to show loyalty, love, integrity. They'd chosen greed instead. "Never apologize for who you love," I told the portrait of Robert that hung behind the desk. "You taught me that." The nursing scholarship had already helped 50 students, kids from backgrounds like mine who wanted to serve but couldn't afford the education. They sent letters, sharing their stories. One wrote, "Because of you, I can care for others without drowning in debt." That letter sat framed on my desk, next to our wedding photo and the ultrasound of our son. True inheritance isn't money or property or shares in a company. It's the values we pass on, the integrity we model, the love we freely give. They wanted his money. I wanted his morning coffee and terrible jokes. Robert James Turner Jr. was born on a Tuesday morning in the same hospital where I'd met his father. The irony wasn't lost on me. Beginning and ending in the same place, the circle of life completing itself. David had requested time off from the warehouse to meet his nephew. I denied it. "You can meet him on your scheduled break, just like any other employee." The company I now ran looked nothing like the one Robert had left. We'd implemented a revolutionary family-first policy, extended parental leave, on-site childcare, and flexible schedules for caregivers. Employee retention hit 95%. We hired from nursing schools, community colleges, and vocational programs. People Eleanor would have called beneath us, but who brought dedication she never possessed. The executive team now included Marcus from the warehouse, promoted to operations director, and Maria, Robert's former hospice nurse, as head of human resources. The Turner Nursing Scholarship had funded 200 students in its first year. At the graduation ceremony, I spoke to a crowd of new nurses. Someone once called me a gold digger for loving a dying man. Now I run his company. Never let anyone's small mind limit your big heart. Baby Robert gurgled in my arms as I walked through the company his grandfather built and his father protected. Employees stopped to congratulate me, their genuine warmth a stark contrast to the fake smiles of family gatherings past. Crawford visited one last time, bringing a final letter from Robert to be opened on our son's birth. It read simply, "He has your strength and my stubbornness. He'll change the world." Eleanor sent a card. No money, just words. I was wrong. Forgive me. Maybe someday, not today. Respect isn't given because you share DNA. It's earned through actions, and I'd earned every bit of mine. If you've made it this far, you understand that true power comes from preparation, not privilege. Have you ever faced family betrayal over money? Share your story in the comments. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories of underdogs who refuse to be victims. Remember, document everything, trust carefully, and never apologize for being loved. Until next time, this is Madison Turner reminding you, dignity is your superpower.